Everybody, welcome back to the Identity Jedi Show. Very special episode, because this is going to be different than most episodes you've seen on this channel. There's a reason why. First, we got to jump back in the time machine and go back about 6 years ago, Austin, Texas. One of my very first podcasts that I recorded, first video podcast. I had friends of mine, Richard Byrd, Robert Block, flying to Austin. Cedric was there. And we shot this nice, beautiful podcast. Having cocktails, but there was one person that was missing. And every day since, he has let us know how upset he was that he was not invited to be on that podcast. And since then, we have been planning, trying to redo it, have everybody together. But finally, we said, you know what? Let's just have him on his own podcast episode. And so today, we welcome to the Identity Jedi Show, Mr. Jeremy Rohrs.
Thank you. Where's the bourbon?
I forgot it. So, I mean, granted, we are in Vegas. We probably just go downstairs and get some. But, you know, it's kind of early, man. It's kind of early for bourbon. I mean, not for Vegas, but, you know.
Agreed. We can do it without this.
All right, so we have to, like, tell the origin story. Like, of how this whole me, you, Block, Bird thing kind of came together. I've got Block stories for days. I'll tell those later. I'm trying to remember. Okay, when's the first time? I remember the first time we actually talked was at the Cell Point SKO in Austin. Yep. But I think the first time we met was like, I want to say it was like in a dinnerverse somewhere like in Washington or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was like 7-8 years ago. I think we would have met at Identiverse, Gartner Identity, Navigate, something like that. Yeah. But back in the days, long dreadlocks back then.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. They're gone now.
Been a long time.
It has been a long time.
And this is my first official podcast ever.
I mean, listen, we had to make sure that you had the best experience ever for your first ever podcast. So it was interesting because I think it was once I met Bird, which was hilarious. And I think I've told that story a number of times, but we were at an event together. I was at Cell Point. He was at Optiv at the time, whatever. Bird stands up, gives this, we're at a Fleming's or Morton's or something like that during a lunch thing. And so he stands up with a freaking cocktail in his hand and a bow tie. And I'm like, who is this asshole? Like this pompous prick. And he gets up there and he just starts talking. I'm like, I mean, I gotta give it to him. He's making a lot of sense. And so he comes down, we sit down, we end up talking, and we've been friends since. Block, I met in Austin at a Navigate. We end up shutting down a bar, listening to like hip hop music. We end up taking over the bar. Like we gave him my aux cord. So that's how I met Block. And then I know it was always, I kept hearing Rohrs, you were always kind of around. And we never really talked until then, that Cell Point SKO. And I think that's when I just started 6 years. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about that. No, it's okay. We'll leave that for the After Dark podcast where there's more bourbon to tell those stories. But I think the interesting thing about it was, for me, knowing that like you were kind of in that circle, right? And Aubrey, talked the world of you. He was like, Rohrs is a really good guy. I was like, I don't know. He seems kind of sleazy to me. I was like, At that time, I didn't like salespeople. I still don't like salespeople. I was like, he seems like a sales guy. And Aubrey was like, no, it was really cool. And so I was like, okay. And we didn't get a chance to work and do a lot at Sexetta, but then I ended up going to work for Meese. And then that's, I think, when talking to Jason Meese, talking about you, like, and I think as I got a chance to know Jason Meese, he's very much like, the words he chooses to describe people, like he picks very carefully. I think that's one of the things that me and him got along because I'm very much the same way. Like I say exactly what I mean, not anything different. Because other words, like your words lose value. And so he spoke so highly of it. I was like, Rohrs, that guy? And he was like, yeah. So obviously from there, we ended up working together at Sexetta. And then from there, like the friendship just kind of grew from there. So
those are a lot of names that you just brought up, right? And I think the one constant in all those is the relationship that stands the test of time and how much you learn to respect each other and then how much you need each other. Like I remember walking into a very large bank in New York City the first time I ever met Richard Byrd. And even though I worked at the same company with him, I sat down across a boardroom table. He stood up in his bow tie and started doing his thing. My first thought, who in the world is this guy? And it took me probably a half hour and then probably 2 hours of a bar that night to really go, okay, now I get it. Yeah. I can put the shtick aside for a second.
Right.
The guy legitimately knows what he's talking about. The same for all of them. Like Block. I mean, Block, 60% of the world hates to love him and 40% of the world loves to love him. Like there's no real in between. And then But I think Jason Meese has probably been my biggest mentor for the last 15 years. He's the first guy, my first identity consulting gig at Harvard. He was the first person I met because my boss stood me up for a meeting and I happened to be sitting in a waiting room with him. And we went to an Irish pub for 3 hours and that was it. But I think that, I mean, we could do the next 25 minutes just on relationships with those guys alone, right?
We could, and I want to spend a little time on it because I think it's important. Like one of the things I think I've enjoyed about this industry and why I love it so much is those relationships and getting a chance to meet, when you meet colleagues and then coworkers and they just become friends, right? And I think that's one of the things that I think is unique to this industry. It's the only industry I've ever been in, so I don't know. People in other industries like, oh, every industry's like that. I was like, I don't know. I don't think it is the way this one has been, right? We get a chance to work with each other through like different companies and partnerships over the course of the years, but because of that, we're at conferences, we're on the road all the time, whatever. And so you kind of go through those experiences together and kind of form those friendships. And I think for me, it's been very important, you, Byrd, Aubrey, Block, I don't consider you guys, you guys are friends, right? I don't consider you guys like colleagues or coworkers. And it was funny, I was telling my girlfriend the other day, she was like, she was asking me like, is this how all the conferences are? And I was like, it has been like since I met them. Like we will literally text each other and like, who's going to this okay, great, I'm going. And I was like, I literally make my decisions on conferences based on like, are enough of them going? Then I'll go be there.
I think you're right in that this space might be part of it because 10 years ago, it was such a specialized, complex thing that very few people knew in general. But then when you couple that on people that can actually go out and be verbose about the industry as a whole, you start to want to follow those people. I can't do business without making people my friends. Like, you know me. Yeah. I mean, Jen and Cassie just spent the weekend at my lake house on Memorial Day. Like, it becomes part of the family because if you think about everywhere you've been or I've been, whether you were at SailPoint and I was at Optiv and KPMG, like the one constant going from place to place is you can turn around and call a colleague the second you get to your new place. And if you built the relationship right, there's inherent trust, right? I mean, there's people in the industry that maybe didn't have a ton of trust with Savient 4 years ago. I go there, start bringing some of our group of people over there, and it inherently forces other partners to go, well, if they're there, and that group of people is starting to form their group there just becomes that inherent trust that Savient must be doing the right things now. They're bringing the right people and do the right things, right? And it's really valuable to me. I couldn't do my job without that. Like if I ended up at a place and we were just coworkers and it was going to the office every day, I would never be successful. I couldn't be.
Yeah, and I think for me, what I always found interesting, right? And we had this conversation in New York. It was always very rare to find like genuine people in like this. I believe like just in corporate America in general, and then like in this industry, like to your point, you find some people who are just like, oh, we go to work, they kind of do these things, and it's like, all right, cool, we're just coworkers, and that's fine, right? And I was always fine with that. But to your point, I also do enjoy, like, it makes it so much easier when you get to go, quote unquote, go to work with friends. And I think one of the things that it took me a while, right? You had to grow on me, and you did, was, I just, well, no, it's just, it's because I know how I am, kind of going back to that quality in Meese, that why him and I got along so well, is because I put so much integrity in words and value in those words. And so you just meet a lot of people in this industry that don't do that. And so it's like, okay, well, I don't hold everybody to, I had to learn how to stop holding everybody to the standard that I hold things to. It's like, if I say something, it's this. I was like, well, this person said this, but they don't mean it. And I'm like, oh, that happens all the time. And I was like, oh, I got to get used to that. And so it was always kind of like, new people I kind of kept, kind of like at bay and just kind of seeing like, I let their actions kind of define, kind of who they were. And I think the biggest thing about you that I admired was like, you're the type of person that can like walk into a room and like everybody else will tell the story. Like you don't have to say anything. And most of the time you won't, because everybody else around there will be like, no, they'll tell this story and this story and this story. And that loyalty and that friendship comes out. And that is, I remember telling you, I was like, that's leadership in a completely different way that evades so many people because of that fact they don't know how to genuinely like make relationships. Yeah. And it's one of the things that not only do I admire, but that I respect about you is because, I know if we work on anything together, it's like, I know Jeremy's got my back no matter what, and he knows I have his. And it's like that, to your point about that trust, just allows you to do so many things when you're working together. Because it's like, I don't have to worry about anything else. I got this part, Jeremy's gonna get that part, and if anything goes wrong, like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think one of the funniest things that I've learned about leadership, and Robert Block and I were just talking about this in Mohegan Sun, because I reported to Block initially at Optiv, and something I learned very early is having somebody's back on your team, while it's a leadership quality, you do it for one reason, because if you have their back because they either did something wrong or somebody thinks they did something wrong and they didn't, either way, I'm their leader, and if they did actually do something wrong, I still need to have their back, and then I got to go fix it another way, because inherently I did something wrong because Cassie didn't know how to do something, so that should be on me. So having somebody's back on my team means just having my own back. And if I have to go to some other leader in an organization and just fall at their feet and be like, we screwed this up, how can I do better? That's on me. It's not on Cassie, but she shouldn't have to take the heat for that.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't believe that.
No, and I think something you said earlier about, like Richard Byrd, inherently he gets up and he talks, and oddly, a lot of people that don't know him immediately go, I don't trust that guy. No. And I see myself in a ton of conversations with people about Richard or me saying, like, get to know him, give him your full self for a night, and get to know him as a human, and it'll all change. And the rest of the stuff just becomes fodder, right? Like it's obviously a shtick on some level, but it's amazing getting to know, because I take pieces of everything. There's a lot of things you've taught me about culture in the last 4 years that I just thought I knew but didn't know, right? And I take pieces of that from you. I take pieces about what Bird's been through in his life with his family and everything.
Yeah.
You take pieces of that and you impart that on your team, and you just start growing people, and people just inherently want to be in your circle.
Yeah. So we never really talked about this. I want to. What's the end goal for Jeremy Rohrs? Like
the end goal?
Like, yeah. What do you want to be when you grow up, Jeremy?
I mean, it would be great to sell a company for a lot of money. But to me, it's the relationships, right? Like, Saving could be that Big Bang Theory that goes public, and I don't need something after that.
Right.
But that's not where it ends. It ends with vacations in the Dominican Republic with you in the group of people. It's helping what's next for them. Maybe those people don't make a lot on a sale of this company, and they need steps 2, 3, and 4. Like,
right.
I'd really like to be, not necessarily like in the VC community, but helping people advise on next. How do they become a bigger leader? How do they replace people that move on after that? Like, I think that would be fairly cool. And if that comes with VC money, great.
Write a book like Byrd?
Yeah. Did he really write that?
I think he wrote it. I'll give him credit. I think he wrote it. All right. I've only seen the cover though. Has he sent you an advance copy yet? Okay. I'm just gonna.
Am I in that book?
I don't know.
What about you? What's your end goal? Way more about your brand than it's ever been.
Yeah. I mean, my end goal is it's always been the same. I don't think I've probably shared the full vision publicly, but from the time I started working, I came out of college, right? I always had this, vision to kind of come in, do tech. I'll be like a, CTO, whatever, do all the technical stuff, build a career there, and then transition out of it. My thing has always been just larger business ownership and being able to tell stories and that nature, right? So kind of like large media company and building something there where not only taking the narrative, whether it's education or it's entertainment or it's training, but being able to take like these stories and that message and take that out to the public, right? I've always known from a young age that, speaking and stuff like that came easy to me, and like, influence and stuff like that as I was getting older. And so I knew I always wanted to do something with that. So that's always been a vision. It kind of cleared up about my mid-20s. And so for me, it's taking the media company, continue to grow it, continue to tell stories, using that to leverage to give back to communities, educate, like inspire. And then the biggest goal that I don't know if I'll get to, but it's always kind of been the shooting star, is I wanted to own a sports franchise, right? And so, but when I think I wrote that one down when I was like 22. And at the time I was like, okay, average sports franchise, because I love the NFL, was like, at that time was like, $800 million. I was like, well, I got to become a billionaire. I was like, how are you going to become a billionaire? I was like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. So, I mean, for me, the next for me is just kind of continue to go down that path and building that wherever, that kind of leads. And I've just always been the person. It's like, I'll shoot for all these things. And it's like, if I miss, then I'm still so much further along than anywhere else I could have imagined, right? So will those goals happen? I don't know. I'll keep shooting for them. But if I miss and end up, fairly financially independent and can travel and hang out with friends the rest of my life, then I'll take it.
It's been really cool for me the last 5 years to see your trajectory from an awareness perspective, because you talk to Cassie and Cassie says things like, I've never had such an advocate as you. And then I met David Lee, and I don't know when I first met you if you were that advocate for more than just yourself. And what I've seen the last 4 or 5 years, the awareness you're creating, the advocacy you're creating for whether it's financial services and in culture or whatever it is, but it's been amazing to see you transition. So I hope you continue down that path. Like the rest of this corporate stuff can be done.
It wasn't. It was more, I didn't know what to do with all this, right? I think being in corporate, and when I got a chance to start speaking on stages and stuff like that at some point, I was just kind of like, all right, well, this is just something to do. It was cool, right? I got to travel, go different places. But I think for the longest time, I didn't realize the impact or influence that would have. I didn't think it was that important. I was like, all right, well, whatever. Like, I didn't think people actually listened to me. I didn't think I had made it to that level where people like listened and cared and would change. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. But it wasn't until it was actually a Secure World. I think it was St. Louis. It was a Secure World, and I was coming off stage, and this guy come up to me, and he was just telling me like how much he enjoyed like seeing me on stage and how it inspired him, and like he was glad to see young Black people in this space kind of doing different things. And I was just like, okay, maybe this stuff I do actually does like matter and affect people. And it was from there that I started kind of then become much more an advocate for anybody else to kind of get into it. And then that's when I kind of leaned into it, and I guess I felt comfortable like, okay, well, people were fine listening to me if I talk about identity, but if I say something outside of that, what happens? And then I just started seeing like people were nodding their heads and people were saying yes. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep rolling with it. So.
Yeah, I think it took me a while, like 5 years ago, when I realized helping give somebody else a voice is the biggest payback from a leadership perspective. When you see somebody go from a very timid consultant who doesn't really speak their mind, Jen Cox is a great example. When I met her at Optiv 8 years ago, you could barely hear her talk. Like her voice was low.
Right.
She wouldn't, I don't want to say talk back to leadership, but she wouldn't speak her mind and stand up for herself. And then slowly watch her progress at Sex Zeta and now at Savient to where she's running a team of 25 people. She has no problem telling C-level what her opinion is. And it's just like, that's the most rewarding thing I think for me, because that's what really starts building your circle. And I've seen you start to build it. You kind of always had that famous David Lee circle, but how many people walk up to you at Identiverse, you have no idea who they are, right? Like it's probably 70% of the people that come up to you, you don't know their name, but it's those people that you're now creating a circle around that want to spend more genuine time with you and talk about life things, not just what's next. Are we going to go start this next company or go to this company together?
Although, I do want to figure.
We still need to do that somehow.
We do need to figure that out.
Maybe we call Jason Meese. He's got something.
That guy. Just Actually, I called him last week. He didn't call me back yet, so I'm gonna text him. Just be like, "You're a dick," and he'll be like, "I know." But no, I do like. I think it's, I sent that text to our big text group like a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot when we first talked about that. I don't know. Maybe it was when we were all up in Rhode Island or wherever we were, first at Sex Zeta or whatever. But when I look at the level of success all of us have each individually had, right? And I look at the short level success we had all together at Sex Zeta, and just knowing that between all of our friendships and our combined efforts, like I just think there's no doubt in my mind there's amazing things that we could all do, and I know that we will do it at one point. And I'm just I'm just waiting for the stars to align when we all have like the time, effort, and and a financial situation to go and do something. Because I think that whatever we decided to do would truly be impactful, like given the level of talent that we have.
And I think you see that by proxy, right? Sex Zeta ends I just started getting questions from multiple CEOs of other companies. What are you guys going to do next? I want to be a part of it, whatever that means, whether it's a partnership or I want to leave my company to come to that company. I want to put money into whatever you guys are next thing. And it's just really cool to see, because once you get the right people, rinsing and repeating that is fairly easy, especially in this industry, because there's, the top 20% truly know what they're talking about? Something like that.
It is very top heavy.
Yeah.
We're going to change that too, though.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. A couple of quick hitters, though. One thing's number one, you're much better at me than I am at playing this game, but we need to go play golf at some point. It's going to suck for you because you're just going to be like, this is going to be the longest 8 hours of my life.
By far, the most fun I have playing golf is when people don't take themselves too seriously and aren't that great, because everything about me calms down and I'm just swinging away. So I'm all in on that.
All right, so we're going to make that happen. Two, DR in November. We know we're doing that. What is your all-time favorite thing to do in Vegas?
Man, I'm not going to lie. I'm not a huge fan of Vegas. I don't gamble. I mean, short of FanDuel with my son, I really don't. I don't do too much of that. My favorite thing to do in Vegas is what we did between the hours of 10 and 1 last night. Talking to that group of people, and it's funny, you say, 7 years ago, it was different people at every evening event I went to, and now it seems like the last 5 years, we're at Denver's, we're at Gartner, we're at RSA, whatever. It's always like the same core end up in the same room. Whether they have another schedule, like they leave early, they stop talking to people they probably should talk to, which is probably not doing a ton for us business-wise by just keep talking to the same people. But it's just so, no matter how many times you've heard the stories, seeing a story told to somebody that's never heard it, is just genuinely fun to me. So as much as I'm not a fan of Vegas, I get so excited to come here and have those 2 nights.
How do you not like Vegas, man? Jeez.
I don't know. I guess because I don't gamble. Can I go to a bar in Chicago till 1 o'clock in the morning?
I mean, I guess you could. I don't gamble that much.
Spend half as much money.
Good point. Good point. Have you golfed here though?
A couple times.
Okay.
Yeah. Got to do enough though.
Yeah.
Can't do it now.
It's ridiculously hot out there. I thought about bringing my clubs, but then I looked at the weather and I was like, nah, I'm okay.
What's next for you?
I don't know. I think immediately next after this is lunch, and then we've got the live podcast we're shooting later on today.
Is that here?
So, yeah, that's here.
All right. Who's that with?
It's going to be me, Samir, and then hopefully Eve Mailer.
Oh.
Yeah, so we kind of had we got right in her nice little window of logistics. So we're going to do that, have a discussion around what she's up to, what she's seen, right? I mean, she's one of the legendary OGs in Identity. So I was super excited to get her on the podcast. So.
And you got a keynote, yes?
No, Masterclass.
Oh.
Yeah, tomorrow.
What are you masterclassing?
So I'm gonna break down it's the second half of How to Become an Identity Jedi, the one I did a couple of years ago. This one is breaking down 3 concepts: how to ask questions, building identity first architectures, and aligning to business value. But it's really it's a masterclass on all the soft skills that I've built over the years, that when people ask me how do you do this? How do you get so good at this? And how do you know all these things? I was like, it's really these kind of core 3 things. If you learn how to ask questions really well, truly learn how to ask questions, if you learn how to build and map what your identity architecture needs to be, and you learn how to communicate, then those 3 things fit so well into identity for all the things that you want to go get done, right? It helps you get past the blocks of, why did my program stall? Why are we IGA and we only got 60 apps and we can't get any more? It's because you're not communicating properly to the application onboarding team, right? You didn't set the right values. You're pitching stuff to them that you care about, and they're like, I could give 2 shits. I don't want to do that, so no, I'm not going to do this, right? So I'm excited about it because I actually built it as a class. I've got exercises, interactive time, stuff like that. So it should be fun.
Excited.
Yeah, we'll have to do it in 50 minutes.
Good.
Yep.
All right, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime, man. We will get the gang together. Me, you, Block, Bird. We're gonna do that. Yeah. I guess we gotta throw Aubrey in there too now.
Yeah, I guess.
We'll throw Aubrey. We'll get it done. We'll have to get you guys down to Atlanta, and then we'll shoot that. We'll get the guys to come down to Atlanta. We'll shoot that. We'll find a nice speakeasy, something like that.
Works for me.
I'm on it. We'll
Thank
make
you.
it happen. The team's getting excited about it. Wayne's already, I can see the thoughts already. Wayne said, he goes, I know exactly how I'm going to shoot that. He's already thinking, I'm telling you, that's how it works. All right. Listen, appreciate you guys hanging out with us. This has been another episode of Identity Jedi Show. You guys know what to do. Make sure you go to www.theidentityjedi.com. Subscribe to the newsletter. Podcasts are streaming everywhere. Like, rate, comment, wherever you're listening to this on, wherever you're watching this on. You guys know what it is. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Love each other. See you guys next time.